This week's episode is brought to you by Tyler Perry's Sisters on BET.
Next Wednesday on BET.
You came to the office to see your sister. Who's your sister?
Why are you in my house?
Who hired you to blow up a rose a few days ago?
Warning.
Why is Tony so worried about your safety?
You're about to enter
I just thought you should know who you're dealing with.
I'm asking you to leave.
hostile territory.
Y'all enjoy.
What the hell are you doing here?
Things have escalated. We've received intel of an impending hit on you.
Tyler Perry's Sisters. All new next Wednesday at 9. Watch it live on BET.
Calling all my sweeties to the forefront. I'm your host, Renee Hayslett, and this is the Keep It Positive Sweetie Show. Welcome to Keep It Positive Sweetie, a place where we heal, grow, and learn together. Today's guest is a strategist, advocate, and movement builder, Jotaka Eaddy. Jotaka is someone many people know for her impact, but today's conversation goes deeper, from navigating grief and personal healing to finding power in heavy moments. This is a chance to hear how she moves forward through challenge, leadership, and purpose. Kids family, please give a very warm welcome to my sister, Jotaka Eaddy. Hi.
Hi, sis.
How are you?
I feel good. I'm happy to be
Well,
here.
you
with
look good. You came in here radiating.
You know, I think we got a memo.
We
Like, I got
did.
the memo for the brown and the
Yes.
creams today. No, it just feels good. It's 2026. They said, what, the year of the horse?
Yeah, the year of the horse. That's what I'm hearing.
Let's go.
Let's go. We are
Go.
not playing.
go.
I love that.
Because 2025 was,
We made it though.
we made it.
It was it was tumultuous, but we made it.
We made it.
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
did.
did.
So Jotaka, I met you first. I believe it was Essence Festival. That was the first time we actually met. Trail had come on, and I'm talking about Sing Your Praises. He was like, "You gotta meet Jotaka. You gotta meet her." And we got to finally meet in at Essence Festival at his all-white Black Excellence brunch.
Yeah.
And from there, your name preceded itself, so I knew who you were, but I had never gotten to meet you. And it was just you, everything that we hear about Jotaka Eaddy, you are that. And then you blessed us in Washington, D.C. for our Kips Live show, poured into us like no other. And I just want to say thank you just for being you, but also coming into our world and sharing a piece of you with us. Seriously.
Aw, well, thank you. And I
Yes.
love Trail. He is, Trail is my South Carolina
Yes.
brother. So, and just doing amazing things. Like, I
Yes.
think about
Yes.
the Black Excellence Brunch, what it's done for the culture, and then really to be here with you. Like, so I'm grateful to be here with you. Love, love, love your journey.
Thank
And,
you.
the DC, like,
Yes.
like the DC hustle.
Baby, because that's what it is.
The DC hustle, but to just see just the space and just the beauty of
thank you.
what you bring, the impact. So I'm just glad to be here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I want to know, before the titles, before the world knew who you were, take us back to who you were before you knew advocacy was your calling on that journey, because I know it's been a journey.
It's been a journey. So interestingly, I'm from rural South Carolina. So I'm from a town with population 1,400 people.
Wait, that's less than me. I thought I was from a small town.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Johnsonville, South Carolina.
Wow.
I think it's 1,491. Something like that. Like it changes from time to time. But I'm from a little small town. I grew up on a dirt road. My family still lives on that dirt road. And I think really who I always was the kid growing up. My mom would tell me stories about being the kid that would talk to anybody in the grocery store. And I used to say, I want to be a lawyer. I couldn't even say lawyer. So I used to say, I want to be a lawyer. And it really, I think, probably watching Claire Huxtable was a big influence for me growing up. And so that gave me this idea, I want to be a lawyer. I always wanted to help people, but I always wanted to talk to people. So I was that kid that talks too much, but I also was the advocate for other kids in school. So always growing up in a small rural town, I was that kid that was very talkative. And I was also that kid that your grandmama made you get your Easter speech together. So
right.
interestingly, I got my confidence for speaking and being in front of people doing Easter speeches in church. And so I would get an extra long Easter speech. And I never forget my grandma, and I was good at like memorizing.
Yeah.
So I would wait till the last minute, and my grandma would be like, I think her and her sister would compete, like which grandchild was going to do the best. Like my cousin Tara would sing, and it was like, you better get up there and do a good job. Yeah, so I would go through my Easter speech. I would memorize it, but I would get up, and it was like I would perform.
Oh, wow.
And so as I grew up, people would wait. I would get to do my Easter speech
Last,
last
they
because they
wanna-
like
right.
they know you got to do something with your
Yeah.
Easter speech, and but it gave me confidence,
Mhm.
and it gave me a sense of like I could just get up here and speak, and I just remember, older Black women, right, like the Miss Bernie Roos, the Miss Annie Lou's,
Yeah.
the Miss Luvinias that's sitting there. Go ahead, baby. Go
Uh-huh.
ahead, baby. Do it, baby.
Yes.
And that just did something for me. So, like, fast forward 20 something years later, when I'm
Yeah.
speaking at the UN, I'm nervous, but I had the
Wow.
confidence to be there because I revert back to what that felt like. And so
Yes.
that was like the kid growing up, but I was also that kid in student government. I grew up in the church,
Yeah.
a very strong faith, spiritual just tradition for me. Like I grew up in the church. I know, like, for me, like, I'm nothing without God.
Yeah.
And so that all together made me this kid that just believed that I wanted to create something better in the world. And really what did it for me was when I was probably around 8 or 9, the local plant in my town went, the workers went on strike. And Reverend Jesse Jackson
Wow.
came to Johnsonville, South Carolina.
That's huge.
Yes, can
For
you imagine?
1,400 people.
1,400 people. I'll never forget. He marched from Wellman Industries to the high school football field. And I remember seeing Reverend Jesse Jackson. I'll never forget it. I was standing on the other side of the fence, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, like this is
Yeah.
it. This is what I want to do. And I
Wow.
was so inspired. From that moment on, I wanted to be an advocate. And
Yes.
I would fight little fights in student government. Like I was in middle school, like the mirrors in the bathroom were
Yes.
plastic. And I was like, we need real mirrors. I'm gonna fight for real mirrors in the bathroom. But that was kind of the start. So
Yeah, that is amazing. And I love hearing stories like that because a lot of times when you are born into a small country town, we don't have a lot of the outlets that most kids in the city have. So to be able to have a Jesse Jackson come to your town, to show you this is what real advocacy looks like and what standing up for the right thing looks like. I'm sure that was very pivotal.
Yeah. It was something, what's interesting, you think about like what we had. I mean, like, this is like, we had the big satellite dishes because we didn't have, like, we only had like 3 channels, right? We barely had NBC because it was really in Charleston, which is like 2 hours away. So I guess we didn't get signals. So you had like, channel 13, channel 15.
Yep.
Anybody who's watching this, I know there's some, I know y'all on here from South Carolina. If y'all from like where I'm from Florence County,
They
know.
know.
Then the channel 13 and channel 15, and then Fox came like a couple of years later.
Wow.
But we had like 3 channels, and then like you were lucky to get a satellite, and
That's
so
crazy.
we didn't have.
Yeah, I'm
so
sure they're
Reverend
like
Jesse
so proud of you. You're like the
Jackson.
star of the town.
I'm well known for like, coming out of Johnsonville because
Yeah.
it's interesting because anytime I've ever done an interview or any magazine ever like writes about me, I'm very, very like conscious and I'm very like deliberate about them printing that I am from Johnsonville, South Carolina. Because to
Yes.
me, I'm so proud of like being from
Yeah.
this small town. And I think it's important, like you say, like we people that come from small towns, I grew up in like a place where in the school system, guidance counselors didn't lead you to believe that you can do any and everything.
That's so
like
true.
in these small towns
No.
across the country, like they don't tell particularly us,
Yeah.
and so it's important, I think, for people to see that you can, especially if you're like that kid, that young girl that's on a dirt road, that's living in these small towns. You're not in a
Yeah.
big city. You don't have access to some of the programs and
Right.
some of the activities, and you don't have that to see that, like, yes, you can come from a small town. You can go anywhere. You can travel. You can be anything that you want. And I just think it's
Yeah.
really important
It is.
for me to be a representation of that.
Well, you are an
Oh, thank you.
outstanding representation of that. You said before that advocacy isn't a career choice, it's a responsibility. When did that responsibility show itself to you in a way that you couldn't ignore anymore?
I think it probably was in my high school days for me.
Wow.
I became very interested in learning about the death penalty. So also,
Yeah.
Johnsonville, South Carolina is also home to this very infamous multiple murderer, Donald Pee Wee Gaskins. So my small town had this man who had
That's
committed
scary.
a lot of murders and was
Yeah.
on death row. When I was in 7th grade, he had come up for execution. And I'll never forget my 7th grade teacher asked us to argue in class our position. Now, this was the girl who like did the Power Easter speeches.
Right.
So
you
I
ready.
was ready, and I was like, Donald Pee Wee Gaskins should be executed. And you know, I was like, I win the debate. I'm on the winning side. We had to write a paper on the opposing viewpoint that you took in class.
Oh, wow.
So I go and I'm doing this research, and I start to learn about the death penalty. So I learned about George Stinney, who was 14 years old, the youngest person ever executed in the United States, who grew up in Clarendon County, South Carolina, which is probably like 45 minutes from where my little small town is. And I'm reading the history. Then I started digging into Furman versus Georgia, which was a landmark U.S. Supreme Court case. And I was like, whoa, the death penalty has been racist, and they were executing people who committed crimes at the age of 16 and 17. I became very opposed to the death penalty. So I started like a little student group in my middle school and high school. If you go back to my yearbook, interestingly, my friends would write, "Good luck trying to abolish the death penalty." Like that was like the thing that they would say in my yearbook because I was so opposed. So, but that was for me. That's what I got. And then I saw Reverend Jesse Jackson as a younger person. I was on fire, and it was like, I'm gonna be a criminal defense lawyer, and I'm going to go work on death penalty cases. And so
you did that.
I ended up
abolishing the juvenile.
I ended up being a part of the movement to abolish the juvenile death penalty like in 2005. So for me, like that advocacy was like that thing that I couldn't unsee because I realized that like we had been fed this information about a criminal justice system when really when you looked at the history of the death penalty, why the death penalty, like we went from slave codes to, you know, the death penalty and like who largely got the death penalty, largely black and brown men and women in the United States. That the just the unfairness, the bias in the system. And so that was just something that was just a calling for me. And so when I was in, I think I was in maybe the 10th grade, my high school teacher recommended me to go to the National Youth Leadership Forum on Law and Constitution in DC. And it cost $3,000 to go, and it was $3,000 my mom and daddy didn't have. And so the town of Johnsonville, all of the good people of Johnsonville, many black women in my church, they raised the money, sold cakes and dinners, and put me on an airplane that many of them and some of them have never even been on still today, and sent me to Washington, D.C. There I met the executive director, Steve Hawkins, of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. I'm like 16 years old. And I'm like, I want to come work and abolish the death penalty. And he offered me an internship. Like he said, when you finish high school, and I begged my mom and dad to let me go to D.C. And when I graduated high school, I would have stayed with a distant cousin, my cousin Mildred, in D.C. and did an internship. And that literally was what put me on the trajectory that has taken me to where I'm at today.
My goodness, that is fascinating. And we share similar stories in me going from Martin, Tennessee to DC. What was that like going from a very small town? I'm interested to hear your take on it, to the city known as Washington, D.C.? Because I know for me, it was a big jump. And I was like, whoa, this
Yes,
is different.
yes. So it was a bit helpful because I went to the University of South Carolina. And so when I went to USC,
Got it.
it was a, large campus. I was very active at
Yeah.
USC and in student government and student activism there. But when I went to DC, Columbia was like kind of city,
Yeah.
but that was big city to me. But
Uh-huh.
DC, it was like, what is this? And then I had never been around or in a city with so many Black folks that were like just doing the thing.
They
And
were
not that Johnsonville didn't have dynamic, amazing, excellent Black folks, but like just seeing Black people running things, leading mayors, all of that. Like I'd never seen that. Honestly, like I had never even seen or been around other just populations of the diaspora of Black people.
Right.
So that was like my first time like experiencing Ethiopian food or like, and it's just like one of those things because like Johnsonville, there is not an Ethiopian restaurant in Johnsonville. So like for the first time I'm eating Ethiopian food or being open to the other cultures is being in DC. And so I love DC because I always saw DC as the place where you could go create change.
Absolutely. For sure.
And like that's where change is. I mean, over time and over the years of my career, I started to learn that like, nah, like you could create change in other spaces. But I used to think that like if you're gonna do change work, you need to be doing movement work, you need to be like in a nonprofit or you need to be in the government. That's the only way you could do change. And that's evolved for me. But that was like my experience. And it was just like, and DC to me still, DC is still my home. I split my time between DC and LA, but DC for me still, there's something, even though like the heaviness of a Trump administration in Washington, D.C. is very heavy and like what's happening right now, particularly how Black women and Black people are infected.
Let's talk about that. Yeah.
It's still something special to me about D.C.
I don't know the exact number, and you may be able to help me on this, of Black women that lost their jobs last year.
Over 300,000.
300. Grief.
And shout out to Felicia Butterfield.
Yes, we love you, Felicia.
Yes, we love you, Felicia, for the global state of women.
Yes.
And the fund for Black women to have some relief. And so it's a hard time. And it's particularly painful like when you know people.
Yes.
And not just one person, but you know multiple people who have been out of work for over a year. And it's all because of a deliberate, aggressive, poignant attack on Black women, on Black people, on our livelihood, on our lives, on our education, on our culture. And so in this moment, I just think that it's a reality check for a lot of people because I think some people didn't take it as seriously and now are realizing that this is real.
Yeah, this is real. I remember a friend of mine saying when the pendulum started swinging in our favor, he said, be careful. He said, because just as it swings, it's going to go back in the other direction very drastically. And what could you give us as a community advice on how to handle this as the pendulum is not in our favor?
I think in this moment, I'm going to go back to where we started this podcast in prayer.
Yes.
Is being grounded and recognizing that we are always going to be okay because God has us. And I think that's where it starts. It's just having a level of peace and understanding as hard as it is. And I have to speak to my own self about that. That there is something greater that is holding us.
Yes,
and so I think that's the first place. And the second is that we cannot, as a people in this moment, be silent.
Yes.
Like it's not an option. And we have to be united and together, support each other, and support our own in this moment. And so I think that as this pendulum, because it's not just people that had a federal job. It's people who consult or law firms or it's an attack on the entire culture and the entire system. And I think that's the part that is very real, and is the part that is the most dangerous. And so you see now attacks on studios. And so what does that mean about content in studios, and ensuring that there's diversity not on the camera but behind the camera, and all of the craftsmen, all of that. So the attacks now on that, the attacks on universities and funding. NIH just announced that they are no longer going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion grants, that they don't need that anymore. Think about research and health. So the greater impact, think about all the jobs that are associated with that. So I think sometimes when we think about what has happened in terms of these massive, jobs that have disappeared, that we think, oh, it's just someone that was working in a federal government office that maybe we didn't need them.
Right.
Or maybe we do need them.
Yeah.
But it's also, all of the surrounding jobs and industries that are also impact music, concerts, all those things, because there's not the support for all of that. And I think it's just a moment for us to recognize that we are not in normal times.
We are not.
And because we are not in normal times, we cannot our resistance can't look like, business as usual.
Right.
Yeah.
That is so true. That's good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You have been known for also movement building, and people see the movements when it's visible, but they don't see it when it's fragile and behind the scenes and in its incubator phase. I wanted to ask you, can you walk us through what it really takes to move a movement in the way that you have, from working with Kamala Harris, or even with the abolishing the juvenile death penalty? What does it take to really build those movements from the ground up?
I think the first thing is authentic relationships. Because when I go back and I think about how we were able to abolish the juvenile death penalty in 2005, no one thought that could happen.
Right.
And it was a lot of hard work. And I remember, I was I think I was 25 when that Supreme Court case, and I was the chief organizer for the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty on that case. And I remember having to go to South Dakota, Wyoming, New Hampshire, and the work that we did in the United Nations to really get that case into a place where the Supreme Court would vote, which was a 5-4 vote. Justice Kennedy was the swing vote, a very pivotal vote. But what it took was coalition and authentic relationships. And it takes strategy, but I think sometimes people think that the strategy leads, but really it's the authentic relationships first. And once you have that, then you can employ a strategy with those authentic relationships that then can move the movement. And I think also movement is about collective leadership.
For sure.
And it is about collective power. And I think when I think about the work around Win with Black Women, that has really been the power behind Win with Black Women, is the collective nature of Win with Black Women. Because the notion for Win with Black Women is that we all have power.
Right.
That you don't need institutional power. You don't need positional power to have power. No matter who you are, where you sit.
Yes.
You have some type of power that can be a contribution to the collective place that we are moving together as a people. So if you can just think of us as we're all on this journey together, we're all on it's the big highway together, we're in our individual cars, but we're moving, as long as we're moving in the same direction, we're moving forward. Not everybody's gonna drive the same color car or have the same car. We're not all going to drive at the same speed. But if we're moving in the same direction with the goal of getting to the destination, that's how we can have, I think, strong positive movements.
I love that. Now, we talked about your holy yes and your sacred no. When do you know when it's time to say yes to something? I'm sure you get a lot of calls of things to take on. When do you know what to say yes to and what to say no to? And how do you discern what projects you'll take on? Yeah,
and the notion of the sacred no and the holy yes. Or, Oprah Winfrey and Ayanna Van Zant's podcast. Look,
we were just sitting
here. I love it. But we were talking about And I heard that, and it was
Yeah.
just so profound to me because I've struggled with being able to say no. I'm one of those
Wow.
people that my whole life it was always hard to say no because I've always wanted to be accommodating.
Yeah.
And I think this last year for me,
Mhm.
it's been
It's okay.
yeah. Interestingly, it's like it's been the roughest, hardest year of my life.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think most people have seen or saw all the awards or all of
Yes.
the things, the image award, the this, the
Mhm.
that, the this, the
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But I have been on a grief journey,
Yeah.
and it was so hard to be in deep grief,
Yeah.
to deal with a multitude of challenges, but also be thrusted into this light
Yeah.
where people are expecting you to smile,
Mhm.
and inside you're really
Just crumbling.
you're
Yeah.
crumbling on the inside.
Yeah.
And you know, my mother, like the loss of my mother and the way my mother died, it was so sudden, and it was
Yeah.
like an unknown condition that never could be diagnosed. And she was fine in July and died December the 4th. And while the election was going on,
Right.
most people didn't realize that I was spending most of my time in the medical. My mother was in medical ICU on a ventilator for 2 months. And when she ultimately passed, it was very hard. Like, so it's like my mother dies December the 4th. We lost the election in November.
Yeah.
This administration comes in January. The country starts to move in this direction. And so it's just heavy.
Yeah.
And I realized last year that I had to learn how to say no more and yes to myself. And so
Yes.
that's when I think for really the first time forever in my life, I was forced to slow down because there were days I just couldn't.
Right.
I just couldn't. And I'm still learning how to say no, but it has been a work in progress. But you know, life sometimes, and God will sit you down.
He would. Tell me about it.
He'll sit you down sometimes.
Yeah.
He'll sit you down.
Yeah. A lot of people don't they don't understand that also, like, as you're being thrust into the light, life still happens. And so many people don't know what we're dealing with behind the scenes. And the way you push through would have never known. And I didn't know that until you shared it on the live show. And I was just like, wow. Like, the fact that that's a lot. I know what you put into the election, you know, and then to go through that loss and then to turn around and lose your mother, I know that was hard.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, and I was just thinking, I was like, man, I was thinking about people I'm grateful for, and I was thinking about, and I know it's the craziest thing to think about, and I was like, the dynamic, dope women that have done my makeup before I have gone on to get anything, right, or speech or an award or whatever, and because they've had to redo my makeup so many times because I'm literally crying before I have to walk out. I miss my mom so much. She's not here for these things.
Yeah.
And so it's like I know her spirit is here.
Yeah.
But you miss her. And so, like, you go through life, and this person who has poured everything into you to make you who you are, and finally
You're there.
Or you're somewhat there. And she's not physically there. And it's
I got some tissue for you.
It has an impact on you. So it's been really a journey. And I've learned so much about grief and how grief you just have to just go through it. it will hit you at any moment. You know, I
Mhm.
could be in the grocery store and I would see Welch's grape juice because when my mom was getting sick,
Mhm.
she liked Welch's grape juice,
Yeah.
and it would just impact me because
Yeah.
I just think about, you know, like my mother, if I can say her name, Lenora
Mhm. Yes.
Abraham Eaddy,
Mm.
she's my best friend, my
Mhm.
biggest supporter. My mom and my dad both.
Yeah.
But my mom was this person that gentle, kind soul.
Yeah.
Um, and she taught me everything. She was always there, the person I talked to every day. And, you know, it was so harsh. I learned also, like, when my mom, through her sickness, the horror of the healthcare system.
Mm.
Because my mom, you know, it was July.
Yeah.
My mother was fine, laughing, talking. And then all of a sudden, she was like feeling a little off. And she goes to the doctor, and the doctor tells her, you know, that she has anxiety and depression. And I'm like, this seems a little off, you know, but maybe. And so they prescribe her medicine. I'm like, something in my spirit kept saying, something's not right. Now, all of a sudden, my mother started having like the onset of like advanced dementia. And everything I read, every doctor or friend that I spoke to is like, dementia doesn't onset like this.
Yeah.
It's not this fast.
Right.
And so by August, my mom could barely talk, could not. I'll never forget there was this moment when I would fly back home and we'd go see a neurologist, and they're like, oh, it's pseudo dementia. Like, what is pseudo dementia? You know, it's not really real. It'll reverse. And so, and I'm like, something's not right.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I went home and I was in my room and I'm on emails. And the crazy part is life is lifing,
Yeah.
but the world is still moving. So in the midst of this election, like I'm taking calls and doing strategy, and I'm sitting there and my mom walks in my room door. She has on Sunday clothes. And I go, and it's, Mom, what are you doing? It's a Thursday. And she was like, I'm going to church. We're going to church. And she's out of her mind.
Yeah.
But just as childlike and sweet and innocent, dressed to the nines. And I remember I just looked at her and I said, Mama, I said, but it's Thursday. And she looked at me, and it was as if like she felt like, oh no. And she said, it's Thursday? And I said, yeah. I said, come sit beside me. And I remember I said, it was this moment where I just said, but we could pretend like it's Sunday, you know? And that was that moment where I realized, like, and I had thought still at that moment, like, my mom's just going to be in this state. And I'm going to be able to, and at that moment it was like, oh, I can figure this out. We can live with this. We could get the best doctors, the best treatment. And we fast forward to September, and my mother has to go to the emergency room. They run a scan. My mother has a 4-centimeter mass on her brain.
What?
Yes.
And that's what was causing
And that was what was causing. And then from there.
But nobody was like, we should do that. They didn't think, let's run a scan before.
They ran a scan in August.
And it wasn't there?
There was nothing there.
What?
And so this happened so fast. And then from September 24th to December 4th, we went through first being told my mother had a rare infection, to no, it's not an infection. She has a rare form of brain cancer. No, it's not brain cancer, to we don't know what this is. And so when my mother died, I literally had to fight the hospital system because they tried to say that my mother died from kidney failure. It was like, no. My mother didn't die from kidney failure. Her kidneys failed because she's been on a ventilator.
Right.
She's been in this hospital in a coma for 2 months.
Yeah.
But I learned that the hospital system, I just remember having to stay at the hospital because of rounds. Like the way the rounds work, if you're not there when the doctor comes, you don't get to talk to the doctor for the day. So I would stake out at the hospital. I could never leave to fight. And then it's always like, but did you do this? Did you do this test? And what I learned is like, I had all this privilege, all this access. I could call friends that are all these expert doctors, all of this access. And I had the ability and the economic ability to to basically relocate myself to Charleston, South Carolina, where she was. And I thought, if this is this hard for me,
you can imagine.
What is it like for people who don't have my access, who don't have just my abilities? And it just breaks my heart what people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis at a healthcare system. And now with the administration that we have, it's even worse. Hospitals are shutting down, you know, the one place or the one hospital that could actually serve. And so it just really, for me, was a lesson. It was heartbreaking, but it also, for me, was more of a resolve to be a voice and an advocate, to tell the story of my mother about misdiagnosis, because Black women, our pain, whether or not it's the fibroids in our bodies or it's, you know, whatever it is, our pain, or when we go to doctors, it's not viewed the same.
It's not.
It's like, oh, you just got this. Like, my mother was misdiagnosed and just pushed aside. And I still was fighting, and we still couldn't save her. And so imagine the countless other people who have to go through that and are losing loved ones because the healthcare system is not listening, particularly to Black people and Black women.
Right. Oof. Oh, goodness. Yeah, I hear so many times where people are misdiagnosed and even sometimes like the medication, given the wrong medication to begin with. And it's like, that wasn't even what they needed. Yeah. My mother, she has worked in the healthcare system since I can remember. And I could see the toll that it would take on her just as a person who had to see that every single day. Yeah. And I couldn't imagine, especially with our resources and reach what other people are going through. Thank you for sharing that.
But I hope my story can move the needle.
Yes,
and that's for me. It's like it's hard to talk about, but it's important because it's to shed a light.
Absolutely.
It's like we've gotta talk about how we're treated.
We do
in the hospital system. We've got to talk about just how it works and how it doesn't work for everyday people who are just struggling to just keep their loved ones healthy and alive and in our lives.
My goodness. Last season on Sisters, we touched on the disparaging inconsistencies of white women who have childhood birth deaths, and then, child labor birth deaths, and then Black women who have children die during labor, and even women who die during labor, and the numbers
2 to 3 times
crazy.
More likely to die giving birth. And the statistics for Black women against the world, it's alarming.
It is.
It's alarming to hear the stories, the painful stories of Black women, like just the recent stories of Black women who had to give birth in a car or not sit in a hospital as a nurse is not paying attention to her pain while she's in labor. That's very real.
It is.
And we have to do something about it. We've got to talk about it, and not just talk about it. There's powerful legislation in Congress, Black women in Congress that are leading on this conversation. Legislation, that has been championed by Black women in Congress for us to talk about this. And I think the more we talk about it, and the more we take action on it, the better we are as a people, and particularly the safer we are as Black women.
For sure, Well, I know with you being behind it and putting your voice in front of it, I know that the movement will go on and people will hear. And I support you wholeheartedly because I've seen it even with some friends of mine recently who have gone through that. And even as a woman who hasn't had children, that is one of the fears, that's always been a fear of mine. Is I don't know why, but a fear of mine was always that I'm going to die during child labor because of that, so to see it happening more and then hitting closer to home, however I can support and be a voice, I will. Thank you for sharing that. You have been called, and this is one of my favorite shows, you've been called the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. You are the fixer, the strategist, and the power broker. When people started calling you that, did you feel like, was it like, okay, yeah, I'm that girl? Or was it pressure? Did you feel pride? Or were you like, okay, this is a bigger responsibility than I thought?
It was all of the above. I think when I think about it, it was like all of the above. Like
Yeah.
I think it was like Forbes or Fortune that had wrote that. It actually
Crazy.
first started on a podcast,
Uh-huh.
and they were like, "She's Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley."
Right.
And it's interesting how that came, because we always watching
Baby.
Scandal, honey. Like
Thursday nights, had my wine,
honey,
How to Get
like
Away with
Scandal
Murder.
was the thing. I would throw Scandal parties. Everybody's
Yes.
like watching Scandal parties, seeing what Lovey writing about it, what Roland Martin, what he got to say
Lovey.
about it.
Yeah.
So it was. So it's interesting when I went into tech.
Mm-hmm.
It was I did the work around the death penalty.
Yes.
Was excited about the abolition of the juvenile death penalty, and then I was like, okay, I don't want to just be the death penalty strategist. I want to just be a strategist. So I went into doing progressive policy and advocacy work. Then I did Obama campaign, first campaign.
Wow.
And then after that election, people were like, are you going to go in the White House? Everybody was going in the White House.
Yeah.
And I went to the NAACP. My friend who I met doing anti-death penalty work, Ben Jealous, and became the president and CEO of the NAACP. And so I went as his senior advisor and right hand. And so I had been at the NAACP for 7 years.
Wow.
And then I got a call from some investor friends in Silicon Valley who said, we think you should come into Silicon Valley. And I remember I was like doing my movement work at the NAACP, and I was happy. I'm like, I'm great. Just Silicon, I couldn't even say. I'll never forget my friend Albert Sanders. We went to, when they first started talking to me about Silicon Valley, and they reached out and they were like, hey, we think you should come in this industry. And I was like, I don't know how to code. So this is like 2013. So nobody's talking about Silicon Valley or tech in DC.
Right. No.
And I remember I was like, I don't know how to code. It's a bunch of white boys and hoodies. I'm not really a hoodie girl. Like this is not for me. Like that. I don't know anything about tech. So I really had this imposter syndrome that I didn't belong in the industry. And but I had already, worked on Roper Simmons, which was a landmark Supreme Court case. I had lobbied in the UN. I had worked on voting rights laws at the NAACP. So all of this stuff that I had done, but I still didn't see a reflection of myself in the industry. And so I remembered when I first got the offer to go, and it was foreign. Like no one, I think Soledad O'Brien had did this special on CNN about Silicon Valley. And that was probably maybe the first time I think I could say I had been really exposed. So when they first told me, I was calling it silicone. And I never forget, I went to dinner with my friend Albert Sanders. And he was, it's like, back in DC, remember Coast?
Yes.
On K Street.
Yes.
Like we thought we was doing something. We go to lunch at Coast. Like I'm going to a power lunch at Coast. So I'll never forget. Albert worked in the Senate. So we go, and I'm like, Albert,
that was a thing.
They're talking to me about this going, should I never forget, he leaned over, Albert goes, it's silicon, not silicone. Okay, so if you're gonna go there, it's Silicon Valley, not silicone.
Silicone.
And so I had this moment. So it tells you how much I really kind of like knew about the industry, but I still felt like, okay, what is this thing? I don't really know about it. I don't think I can do it. And I remember talking to my friends and mentors like Tanya Lombard and Mignon Moore, and then Frida Kapor Klein, who amazing investor. And I'll never forget, she had this conversation. She was like, you could do good and do well. Because I also had this notion of you could only do good work if you were doing nonprofit, civil rights, in the government. That's the only, like, that's true movement work.
Yeah.
If I go to Silicon Valley, which is business, then I'm selling out. And so I had like that notion, like this is in my 30s. So I'm still thinking like, no, like if I go do this, I'm like leaving the movement.
Right.
When actually the work that I do, impact work, you can just take that to a different industry.
Yep.
And so when I went to Silicon Valley, I came from the NAACP. So I was
Yeah.
never quiet about my advocacy.
Good.
I was never quiet. I was the first Black employee in the company. I mostly was in financial technology and
Okay.
fintech.
Mhm.
And so I was the first Black employee, but I also came out of Washington. So I was this person that was like different and unique in Silicon Valley. And so the
Yeah.
reason I got that nickname was because I was political. And so they're
Yes.
like, you're like Olivia Pope. Like, you could do strategy, but you also are very well connected. And what I realized is like, I just had different connections. And so that's how
Yes.
it came about. And I remember like CEOs and tech leaders often would want to talk to me because they didn't understand Washington.
Yes.
And so I would get invited to dinner, lunches, CEOs of big companies that would say like, help me understand, investors, help me understand, or how should we be thinking about these candidates? And so I just kind of, and it was me just going and talking to people, and that's how I became the quote the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. And
I
then when it
love
got
it.
printed, and I was like, oh,
Like, this has a nice ring to it.
okay, you know, like, but it's still, then you also like, you're like, ooh, like, I ain't all of that, you know. So like, it's still, it's like imposter syndrome because it's
Yeah.
like, okay, now, you know, Olivia Pope was like, boom, boom, boom,
Baby.
But then when you think about it, like, you know, I know so many Olivia Popes.
Yes.
Like, you know, like so many dynamic, like so many of my colleagues, our friends, you know,
Yes.
from Angela Rye to, you know, I could just go on and on with just like all of these dope, dynamic women that are like Olivia Popes. Like they're strategists, they're connectors. And the most important thing is, you know, they wear the white hat in terms of always focusing on impact. And so that was for me being in tech. It was like, not only was my goal when I finally went into Silicon Valley, because I was reluctant. It took me 8 months. Like, I'll never forget, I got an offer and I didn't want to leave the NAACP because I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And I remember I went into the industry. And my goal was not only to help my company, but how can I make sure other people understand how to come into this industry? And that was the first time that I had learned about equity, that I had learned about, you know, all I just knew is to negotiate, you know, vacation and salary, not to understand equity or to understand valuations of companies. So I went from not being able to pronounce Silicon Valley to being an investor, having an equity stake in multiple companies, having worked with a number of companies in Silicon Valley, advising companies in Silicon Valley still today. And it's been a blessing. And it was actually one of the scariest jumps that I ever made, but it was the best jump that I made. And even when I made the jump, I had a bump in there. Like my first job, 8 months in, I got laid off.
What?
I got laid off because in Silicon Valley, it's about fundraising and raising, you know, a company has to raise to continue.
Right.
And the first company that I went to, they didn't raise the Series C that they thought they were. And, you know, last one in, first one out. And I never forget the CEO called and said, I'm so sorry, you know, recruited you away from your job.
So what y'all gonna do?
And it was a blessing. And I remember being so depressed after that. Because I was like, I left my good job at NAACP. Now, granted, when I did go into tech, it was a whole different, you know, it was great. And so I still felt, it was the first time I didn't have a job. And I never forget, my mom had came to visit in DC. I didn't have the courage to tell my mom that I had got a call the day before to tell me that I didn't have a job anymore. Like, what am I going to do? And I remember sitting in the dark in my house. And this was early days, like Facebook video was brand new.
Wow.
And Kenya Clanton had posted a Facebook video, and it was Oprah Winfrey speaking at Stanford University. And it's a very viral clip. But I remember seeing it, and it says, they go, is there anything else that you want to say? And Oprah goes, yes, there are no mistakes. There are no mistakes. That marriage, that job that didn't work out, just to paraphrase what she was saying, there are no mistakes. It is simply the universe moving you in the direction that you are divinely meant to journey.
Yes.
And your job is to understand the lesson. And that spoke to me. I felt like Oprah was talking to me directly. And I never forget that night. I think I tweeted at Oprah. I was like, Oprah, thank you for reminding me that, you know, Black women, you are excellent.
Yes.
And it was something like, one day we'll meet. And it was just like, you know, I was just like, one day I'll meet you. But I was just, but it took me out of, because I shifted my mind. You know, I think it's about, like, the mind is so powerful.
It is.
And how we condition our mind, or how we think about our situation. Like, I was thinking about, I talk a lot to younger people, and I say, you are always going to have rocks thrown in your path.
Yep.
And the question is whether or not you see that rock as a blocking stone.
Yeah.
Is it a boulder, or is it a stepping stone?
Right.
But only you, like, how you view it, will determine your next move. And your next move will determine, like, your journey.
Yeah.
And so you can sit there, and that rock can be a boulder. And it could be a blocker for you. Or you could say, no, this is a stepping stone. I'm going to learn. And so when I heard her say that, I got out of my funk. And then soon after that, I went to another company, and that company had explosive growth, and everything in life has led me to where I'm at. And probably if that hadn't happened, I probably would maybe still be at that company. Maybe I've been an executive vice president or something, happy, you know. But I would not be where I am if that had not happened.
Right.
And the power is in it. For me, that lesson is that sometimes God what might feel like a denial, he's actually preparing you for what he has for you. And the most important thing is to recognize that sometimes God is protecting you, or he's closing a door so that he can open another door. And for you to understand that when that is happening, to just have peace and to just have faith. And that's a lesson that I'm still on today. But to just have faith that God is opening this door, and to recognize and know that the door is there.
Yes. Ooh,
That the
that's
door, you
good.
might not see it, but the door is there.
Yeah.
And it's waiting for you. It's waiting for you. And when God's perfect timing, when his perfect timing, not yours,
Exactly.
it will manifest for you. And so
sure.
that was what it was for me. And so Silicon Valley, like, I go back, I would make the decision 100 times. I learned so much. I grew so much.
Yeah.
My mindset on understanding investing and generational wealth, all of that shifted. And also the understanding that you can be, because you think about the tech industry, the explosive nature of the tech industry, a lot of wealth is created there.
Yes.
And there's still a lot of work for us as Black and brown folks, and particularly Black women and Black people, to have our rightful place in this industry. Because I was in my own way when I was being recruited. I was in my own way. I had to get out of my own way.
Yes.
And then when I had that stumbling block that I thought was a stumbling block, but really was a stepping stone, this industry has taught me so much. And I'm proud of all of the people who came to me and said, girl, I saw you go in there. Tell me what you did. And I literally would sit down with folks and say, okay, this is how you need to negotiate your package. This is what you need to understand. Because, you know, as Mignon Moore often tells us, you got to lift as you climb. You know, the whole notion, each one teach one. So for me, once I learned, it's like, how can I, like, you know, for me, it was like, man, I was trying to be the, you know, the Underground Railroad, the Silicon Valley. So a lot of people shifted out of government in D.C. into tech. And that's something that, like, I'm not, like, solely responsible for, but I feel very proud of so many people that came to me and said, I've been inspired and I'm going into tech. And they've gone on to be at major companies, making major decisions, creating major impact across a number of tech companies.
That's incredible. Wow. You got me wanting to go into tech. Like, listen, because I know, like, I don't understand that world at all, but definitely interested in learning more for sure.
It's something that, particularly with AI now.
Yes.
And I think there's all kind of sides to AI, but there's such power when you think about like a Uber, right? And one of my closest friends, she was the 70th employee at Uber.
What?
I think they were only in 19 cities when she started. Amazing brilliant investor,
Yeah.
Kimberly Marshall. And when she left, they were in 400 cities. And you think about like that technology, but I think when you look at our backgrounds, right? We often think, oh, I don't know about that world. I don't know how to code. It's technical.
Right.
No, when you think about a company like a Uber or an Airbnb,
Yes.
they need marketers, they need lawyers, they need strategists, they need
Right.
government affairs. They need
Wow.
all of these skill sets that are transferable from other industries that we have. And I think, really demystifying tech and helping people understand not only the side of how you can work in tech, but also how you can invest in tech. And how understanding deal flow, understanding how to support particularly Black founders that have amazing tech companies but cannot get the funding because Black women get less than 0.1% of venture funding for their companies.
Wow.
And then Black businesses, Black women, I think it's 1% to 2% in small business loans. So there's a struggle there, but there's opportunities to invest. And I think that is an opportunity for us as a people to engage more in that industry.
I love that. Speaking of Black women founders, the 1 Million Black Women Initiative with Goldman Sachs.
Yes.
That was phenomenal. $1 billion.
Yes, yes.
How? Like, how did you pull that off? That's crazy.
So let me be very clear. Margaret Anandu, because I'm going to say a whole lot of people names on this podcast because I think that's what I believe in doing.
Yes.
Margaret Anandu, amazing, just investor, leader, had been at Goldman Sachs, I think, for like 20 years.
Wow.
And she came up with this idea inside of Goldman Sachs, how to really take investment dollars and bring and pull $1 billion for direct investment that has direct impact that can be tied to impact to Black women. And so and Goldman Sachs had already developed this program, and my work with that program was helping to launch it along with my good friend and partner Joshua Dubois and Michelle Dubois at Values Partnerships. Our firms came together to help launch it, and what was important to Margaret and to Goldman Sachs and the leaders there, and still leaders that are still there, like Sister Asahi there, was that this was something that was done with Black women. And so we had the privilege to work with them to help guide the launch of that, to help guide how we had conversations with Black women to help shape how that work was done. And I'm just so proud to have been a part of that. But Margaret Anandu, I'll say her name over and over and over again, was the visionary and went to the CEO of Goldman and said, let's do this. And David Solomon at the time was like, yes.
Wow.
And I think that speaks to the power of Black women.
It does.
Who have, back to Oprah and Iyanla Vanzant's conversation, having that holy yes, because Margaret had that holy yes, and she was determined and built something, quite incredible, and to be a part of, helping launch that was something really like deeply powerful and impactful for me as a Black woman to just be a part of something so significant and of that magnitude.
That's incredible. There's been other funds like the Fearless Fund that had initiatives for Black women founders that received backlash. Did you guys hit any roadblocks, or was it pretty smooth because she had been with Goldman Sachs for so many years?
Yeah, it was pretty smooth because, and it was before all of the attacks, but it was pretty smooth.
That's
and it was a
good.
great launch, and the program invested, and it's just amazing. And these were a lot of these are large scale investments as well. So it was like large scale investments in projects that had direct impact that would impact Black women across the board.
That is so cool.
I think again, like, when you see like in that moment, I think that was in 2020, 2021. I get the years, like, the COVID years, it starts to get, it starts mixing up. But then you fast forward now and you see the attacks on the Fearless Fund. You see the attacks on all of these funds
Mm-hmm.
that support Black women, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, how are we going backwards? I mean, we
Right.
know, like, it's a
Yeah.
rhetorical question.
Mm-hmm.
We know why we're going and how we're going backwards, but
Mhm.
you know, you just sort of like, you know, as Marvin Gaye says, it makes you want to holler. You know, like
Yeah.
we just keep getting pushed back. But the thing is, Black women, we're resilient.
Yes.
As you know, back to that, you know, I'm just keep talking about like that podcast, you know, with Ayala and Oprah, but like getting to that holy yes.
Yeah.
You know, like when we get that, I
Mhm.
think that gives us a power that's unstoppable.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that. Jotaka, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I've totally enjoyed this conversation. Our theme of season 10 is unapologetic. What does unapologetic mean to you?
I think unapologetic in this season for me, it means that just means that I can recognize that I'm going to be boldly
Yes.
my authentic self in my truth.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I literally had to play you this. I did a video while I was doing makeup today
Oh.
talking about the word for this season. And I literally said walking authentically in
Oh,
boldness
wow.
in your truth.
It's an
That's
alignment.
crazy.
It's an alignment. And I
Yes.
think because it's a thing that I like, I have like these mantras. And so
Yeah.
one for me is when I get up, I say, evolve or repeat.
Mm.
Take you could evolve or repeat.
Yeah. What are you
You
gonna
got
do?
a choice.
Yes. Wow.
And every day, we're not going to all evolve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're not.
Yeah.
But some days we're going to repeat.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give yourself grace.
Yeah.
But my prayer is that I evolve more than I repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, for me, like when I wake up, and a part of that evolution. And when we evolve, it's about how can, like, I'm like one of those people, like, I am going to always cheer
Mm-hmm.
for my sister and my brother that's walking ahead of me,
Yeah.
behind me, beside me.
Yes.
And the person that I am going to look into the mirror every single day,
Mm-hmm.
it is about evolution. Is not about trying to be better than anybody else. It is
Mhm.
about being a better version of myself
Yes.
that allows me to find and to tap into God's purpose
Mhm. Yeah.
on my life,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can live that, but do that authentically in my truth, being my authentic self, being who I am, that little Black girl, Lenora Abraham Eaddy's daughter, that grew up
Yes.
on that dirt road, that was nerdy, that guys talks too much, that wants to help people, but is just gonna be that girl. And I can go all over the world, I could do all those things, but I am still that girl.
Yes.
And I think when I hold that and just tap into what I feel
Mhm.
God has for me.
Yeah.
And God, I feel like God's calling on my life is just to do something and to push our people forward.
Yeah.
Then to me, that is being unapologetic.
I love that.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
I have been very open about us talking about our lows
Mm-hmm.
equally as much as our highs.
Yes.
Because I think right now social media has us people on highlight reels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people are led to believe that it's always good. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It is not. Like, and so I talk about the low moments
Yeah.
equally as I talk about my high moments,
Mhm.
because I believe deeply that really, I think, and it's been true for me, more people have connected when I talked about my lowest moments,
Yes. Because what everybody's going through.
because other people going
Yes.
through it.
Yes.
And so when you talk about that, someone can say, I'm not alone, because most of the time somebody's sitting there,
Yeah.
they're going through it, and they think that it's just them.
It's not.
And it's not.
Mm.
And I think it's important for all of us with platforms
Yes.
to talk about it, to talk about the low moments equally as the high, to talk
Yeah.
about how we have tests, because without tests, we don't have a testimony.
Come on.
And to talk about the testimony and how we've come through, but the fact that we had to go through to get, and also that I think sometimes people see, you know, they see the awards, they see the lights, they see the red carpets, they see all of that.
Yeah.
But
They don't see
people
them
don't
tears.
see, they don't see the tears, or they
Yeah.
don't see the work, or they don't see the 20 years that got us there. Like, it wasn't overnight.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
social media, while it is a blessing, in many ways, I believe that it's dangerous, because it gets into people's psyche that people are often forced to compare themselves
Oh, yeah.
to edited videos.
Yep.
And they are comparing their everyday life to an edited highlight reel that someone created
And cropped out the
and
low.
cropped out the low.
Yeah.
And I think we got to talk about the lows so that people can understand that they're not walking these journeys alone.
That's it. I love
Yeah.
that. So true. So true.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have what is called positive outcomes, where our audience members write into us and ask us a question. This one says, "Hello, Crystal. First off, I want to say that I love your podcast and the light it shines on mental health and finding faith. For the past 25 years, I've been dealing with CPTSD, chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, and depression stemming from deaths and other adverse childhood experiences. I started therapy during COVID-19 lockdown, hoping to put an end to thoughts of self-harm and to feel better. Suggestions of medication have been made, but I am very apprehensive about introducing that into my system. My question to you is, what are your thoughts on taking medication for mental health? I worry about the side effects and have been trying to look for more natural, holistic alternatives. I've also started a slow return to faith traditional church and have received conflicting opinions on the subject there. I don't know what to do on this one. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Sierra M." First of all, Sierra, thank you so much for writing in. Jotaka, I thought this would be a good one because you spoke about your mother, and she was diagnosed with mental health disorder and they put her on meds. And that wasn't even what it was.
Yeah, it was a misdiagnosis.
Yeah. So what advice would you give her, because you have actually dealt with this firsthand?
Yeah. First of all, Sierra, just saying to you, my prayers and my thoughts are with you, but also I heard the part of going to faith and getting conflicting opinions.
Yep.
And the thing that I would say first is, for me, when I'm most quiet, I hear God. And so you're going to hear all kinds of opinions, but listen to that inner spirit, that inner voice. I believe that's God talking to us. So that's the first thing. But I believe that, you know, like my experience with my mom, I remember, like, it was like when my mom came and said, when they said, the doctor said what they said, I struggled with it, because it was like, what is this? Like, you know, and my family has a history of mental health challenges. My great-grandmother died in a mental health institution. And so, and, you know, back then it was like, they don't know what's wrong with her. I think, you know, now I think it was, you know, postpartum and, you know, complications postpartum of what was happening, but she was in and out. And I don't know much about her, and that's been like this thing to try to learn about her. But when my mom, like, you know, I had friends, very close friends, who have had parents that have been diagnosed with mental health disorders. And so when they said that, and they just so quick to do the meds, which was detrimental to my mom because it wasn't her diagnosis. My mother had a mass on her brain, not a mental health disorder. And so what I would say is that, you know, really finding the healthcare provider that you can trust, that really will dive deep into a diagnosis, but also what will help most. And I'll also say that I recently started to look into more natural, holistic, started learning about psilocybin treatment and reading more about psilocybin, which is the treatment, mushroom treatment, psychedelic mushroom treatment for healing. And I had a friend that shared that they had experienced that and shared that it was like 4 years of therapy as he was going through grief, very traumatic grief. So
Yeah.
I would say being open to holistic, but really finding that therapist and that medical provider that you trust
Yeah.
that will give you the right mix of remedy, because sometimes like people think that you could just take a pill and sometimes those medicines may make it worse. Or I'm not a doctor, so I never would give medical advice, but seeing all the things that but I'm not a person that says don't take medicine, because I think if you I have lots of friends that have to take medicine, and it's needed. But I just think making sure, not really being ashamed of it. I think that's the bigger thing, is like destigmatizing mental health. Like we have to destigmatize that sometimes you are not okay. I believe everybody at some point is not okay.
Yes.
So we have to destigmatize this notion that we're always okay. Destigmatize going to therapy. Destigmatize if you need to take medication, and destigmatize this notion that having a mental health diagnosis is the end, or that something is innately wrong with you, because we are made by God. And God does not make mistakes.
Yes.
And we are all made perfectly imperfect.
Yep.
And I think it's important for us to just accept. And I think as a society, when we destigmatize that we will not have, this question of, it's one thing to think about, do I want to put medicine in my body?
Yeah.
Is it healthy for me?
Yes.
It's another is, how do I feel if people know I'm taking
Right.
medicine? I'm on meds, and I think that's the part that we've got to destigmatize.
No, for sure. That's so good. Thank you so much. For me, Sierra, I would echo what you said about being still in silence and hearing God's voice. For me, I journal. Working out is my therapy. I have a therapist, but also meditation, in that sitting still and really hearing God's voice. But also with journaling, I'm getting out my thoughts. That's my outlet. When I don't have anybody just to physically sit down and talk to, I can also write down how I'm feeling. And when it comes to church, and I've heard it so many times, like I don't need therapy or I don't need help because I have Jesus, or and I feel like you will get conflicting messages when it comes to that, but I am a true believer that both go hand in hand.
Both go hand. Because Jesus gave the doctors the expertise to be able to help you.
Come on.
And so that's the part too. It's like, God gave them God gave them God gave them what they got to help you. And sometimes God is helping you through other people.
He is, yes.
He's helping you through other people.
Yeah. So thank you so much for writing in. Thank you so much. Your advice was spot on. And thank you for sharing your experience with that.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there any way that we can support you, or anything that the audience needs to be on the lookout for? Because we want to get behind you on everything you have going on.
Well, I would first say, Win with Black Women. If you're a Black woman, I know there's lots of Black women out here watching. Yes. All of y'all out here. I love it. It's just, being in D.C. was so amazing.
My goodness.
Seeing so many sisters drive in, fly in, come in.
Crazy.
I love the community.
Yeah, so
but
beautiful.
I would say, join us on a Sunday night. I would love for you to come on a Sunday night, Win with Black Women, and talk about not only the podcast, but everything that you're doing.
Yes.
It's at winwithblackwomen.org. On most Sunday nights, we're on Zoom still.
I love
all
that.
of us are still getting on Zooms, thousands of us, and it's really
Because it started with like 44,000. Was that?
Well,
was that
we
the very
started
first
in
one?
2020 during the pandemic, and there were
Wow.
that was when it was like hundreds of us.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So even from 20 to 2024, everybody, Miss Oprah had gotten on the calls. And I'll never forget, Oprah was like, "So you have these calls? I wanted to get on one." I was like, "Girl, what?" And I'll never forget, like this, we had it's like the first, people don't realize, Win with Black Women calls for the first 4.5 years before the viral call was a regular Zoom.
Wow.
On my Zoom account that had like 1,000 people could be on the Zoom.
Yeah.
And so I'll never forget one time when Miss Winfrey, when Oprah got on, it was like the Zoom went from like 250, it went like to 999. And everybody was like, because like Oprah like you're just sitting in a Zoom and Oprah in the box just with you, like, and she was just sitting there and she was just like all the calls. Like it's been so over the years, like we had every Black women that were running for office, you know, Black women in entertainment. It was like all of it, and so people knew about it. So if you knew, you knew. And so the crazy part was the night that we had the viral call. I'll never forget that day. I was crazy. I was in South Carolina because my mom first got sick. Wow. So I was in South Carolina because I just went to check on my mom because she wasn't feeling well. So it was July 24th. Yeah. And so the announcement comes out. We had already had a call set for Sunday. It was already set. Yeah. And so the Win with Black Women call was set. Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was on the agenda, Donna Brazile. And so we were talking about Melanie Campbell. Shout out to Melanie Campbell, because everybody was trying to push President Biden out. And Black women were like, no, President Biden has been good to us until he's ready to go, then he'll go. Right. And Sister Melanie Campbell had penned an open letter. It was 8,000 Black women had signed that letter, and we were standing firm. Yes. And when he made his decision, when the announcement happened, I remember it was like about 2:00. Yeah. And so we were like, oh, we got the call tonight. So we shifted kind of the focus of the call, and I really thought that we would have gone from 1,000 to maybe 3,000 people on the call, you know, and we were just thinking like, oh, it'd be maybe 1,000. We were gonna hit our max. And I never forget, I told you know, one of the sisters that helped on the tech, I was like, let's keep it at 950. Let's only let 950 people in. So we have like a, you know, a special guest that want to get in. We got enough space. Yes. When I could get on my own Zoom, then we switched the webinar, and in real time, the reason why we were able to grow in real time, it was a sister, a Black woman, got on the phone while we were like, I don't know, so many people on that call. We were like, yeah, people are like trying to get in, and I'll never forget that. I'll never forget. She picks up the phone and she calls her friend at Zoom, and in real time, artist Hampshire Cohen calls her friend, the COO of Zoom, in real time, 10:30 or something at night. They open up. The engineers come in, open up the Zoom. In real time, and that's when
they lifted the cap off.
And it went to 44,000, but by then there were 30,000 people in Clubhouse. There were 10,000. My line sister told me she just put out a free conference call number, and she said the next day she was like, it was 10,000 people on it. So there were, we count probably about 150,000 people were either on the Zoom or watching that Zoom that night. And so that was
the power of the Black woman.
That's the power of Black woman, the power of the group chat.
The group.
And the group
Who is in
text.
your group chat?
Who's in the group chat and the group text? Because people would be like, how did that happen? It was like, child, that's Black women talking to each other. Yes. That's how that call happened. It was Black women, honey. Black women.
We will definitely be tapped in. Yes. I love that.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So good.
Oh, my goodness.
Today I am wearing a Wolford bodysuit turtleneck. My leggings are by Soroya, shoes are by Tom Ford, and my jacket is by Litkaspa. This was a powerful reminder that even in the hardest seasons, healing and purpose can coexist. Thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of Keep It Positive, Sweetie. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who could use a little encouragement today. And as always, stay blessed, stay encouraged, and remember, keep it positive, sweetie. I'll see you guys next time.